Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next installment of the Galen Data Medical Device Innovation Webinar Series. My name is Abbas Dalawala, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Galen Data, and I'll be your host today. Today, we are hearing from Weronika Michaluk, MedTech Practice Lead at HTE Health, for a conversation on how to accelerate software as a medical device development while also reducing the cost. We'll discuss how to identify and overcome pitfalls, strategic development approaches, and then accelerating innovation. But first, few housekeeping items and a little information on Galen Data. So Galen Data provides an FDA-compliant cloud for medical device manufacturers. The Galen Cloud provides a configurable platform for device-to-cloud connectivity that is compliant to FDA, HIPAA, and CE standards. We are ISO 13485 certified, and our product on AWS is also Hydra certified. Founded by seasoned medical device professionals, our goal is to make medical device cloud connectivity available to all at a fraction of cost, while shaving months of development time. Galen Data allows medical device companies to stay medical device companies and not become IT companies. Finally, some quick logistics. So as we are going through this, if you have any question, there should be a Q&A button or a Q&A section available on the sidebar, either on your left or right. Ask the questions at any point in time. I will either bring up these questions for Weronika if as we talk, or I'll bring it up at the end. There's also some handouts on those control panel, so you can download a Galen Data white paper, for example, and there's some other more information on Galen Data. That being said, let me introduce our guest, Weronika. Welcome, and thanks for taking the time to join us. I'll start with maybe a brief introduction on your end.
So thank you so much for having me here, Abbas. I'm really happy to join you and to be able to share some insights with the audience today. So my name is Weronika. I am Polish, as you can tell by my accent. I am a MedTech practice lead at HTE Health, a biomedical engineer by training, have been in medical device space for more than a decade right now. Started actually career as a biomedical engineer doing the hands-on work, like soldering, programming, and all this fun stuff. I designed and built wireless ECG system. There was no Galen data by this time, so I had to go through all of this, difficulties. But after that, biomedical engineering period of my life, I moved to South Korea, where I was leading neuroscience department, and we were focusing on the optogenetics research, which was very, very interesting as well. Then I moved to Miami. I did my master's and MBA, and I worked for Boston Scientific, where I was leading digital health and software as medical device initiatives. And 3 years ago, I joined HTE Health, finished Doctor of Public Health, and at HTE, I am leading MedTech practice. So now I will tell you a little bit also more about what we at HTE do. So we always say that we are on a mission to imagine, design, and build more human-centric, accessible, and productive healthcare industry. Because we always have to remember that we have to put humans in the center, because there is at the end patient. So it's very important to design and build software having humans in mind. And here, as you can see, what we always also say, we put humans at the center of everything we do. We are a team of 200 people right now, with the offices in Poland, New York, Nashville, Tennessee, and soon in a month, Miami. I'm moving to Miami, Florida in a month. So if any of the audience will be there, please reach out. We'll be more than happy to chat. So far, we were founded in 2016, and so far we've developed more than 250 production applications, and we are purely focused on healthcare, which is also very important. We have a unique structure, which is, our practices. We have payers and insurance practice, MedTech, AI/ML, interoperability and data liquidity, and SaaS and platforms. And during the presentation, I will share with you how all of these practices actually combine the efforts and specialties and expertise to then tackle challenges from different aspects. Here are just some of our clients that we work with, but we don't say that we only work with big organizations, because we do work with companies with different size, from small startups all the way to big medical device organizations and medical centers. Um, as I mentioned, our difference is we are purely exclusively focused on healthcare, with deep domain expertise across the healthcare ecosystem. We really are focused on human-centered design, and we have great behavior change design experts on board. And we always say that, we are actually one-stop shop. So we don't want our customers to go and look for many different technology partners, but we can support you throughout the whole complete product life cycle. And these are our services, from technology consulting, strategy, product discovery, design, development, all the way to actually successful product market launch. And here are some of the services that are mainly focused on my practice, which is MedTech practice. So as you can see, from market access strategies, through compliant agile development, through connected devices, interoperability, which is very much linked to also Galen data. And I will mention that how we make that as a perfect partnership. And then human factors, usability engineering, V&V, and robust cybersecurity and data protection. So as I mentioned, we take care of lots of things. So that's what HTD does.
Hey, thanks for that introduction, Veronika. So let's talk the topic on hand today is software development or software as a medical device development. But maybe we start a little bit back and kind of explain maybe the differences between a software as a medical device development versus a traditional medical device development, and kind of what some of the unique challenges we end up with in SaMD, but also some opportunities that are specific to SaMD that may not be able to leverage on a regular medical device. So let's dig in.
Definitely, Abbas, and great point. So actually, let's start what you suggested with actually laying down what software as a medical device is, right? So a software as a medical device, in a formal way, is a software intended to be used for one or more medical purposes that perform these purposes without being part of a hardware medical device. So in a simple terms, it's software that can be run on your Apple Watch, on your phone, on your laptop, and it doesn't require hardware as a medical device, but it actually performs the actions and the purposes as the medical device itself. But to give, what you also suggested, Abbas, to give maybe more like examples, software in a medical device, and then versus software as a medical device. So everybody was in the hospital. So when you went to the hospital, you've seen the EKG machines, insulin pumps, or like USG machines, all of these big medical devices that require software to actually run and perform their purposes. So this is the software in a medical device. And the difference between the software in and software as a medical device is mainly the hardware that the software is run on. So again, instead of having, the big EKG machine, you have your EKG on even your, like Apple Watch is a class 2 medical device right now, so you can do EKG at home. Then the automated insulin dosing systems. Many companies now even, we have this over the counter. You can buy that and perform all the actions at home. And the same mobile USG at HTD, we've developed some this kind of software class 2 medical device. So this actually allows us, medical device manufacturers, to provide access to care for patients, because it's also, very important. Our mission is to also make healthcare more accessible. So thanks to software as a medical device, we can really make this happen. So, I want to take you today, together with Abbas, my friend, we want to take you on the journey to hike Kilimanjaro mountain together. So Abbas and myself, we will be your guides during the journey, and I want you to think about creating software as a medical device as climbing a mountain, because it can be challenging, but with the right tools, with the right preparation, and with the right partners, you can get to the top. And today, let us be your guides and let us help you to get to the top. So I hope by the end of this webinar, we will get to the top of the mountain together and overcome all of these challenges. But again, let's start with the key challenges in SaMD development. So because it's not so easy to develop software as medical device, because again, it acts as a medical device. So there is a patient at the end. So it's very important to follow regulations, regulatory requirements. And one of the challenges are actually regulations, because they are tough to navigate. And especially, now, like when it comes to software, the landscape is changing. So there is like AI, ML, cybersecurity, new guidelines that FDA is releasing, which is actually great because FDA is keeping up with the technology, but we have to also keep up with the with FDA regulations as well. So I would say one of the key challenges is regulatory complexity, and we have to ensure that we are, up to date. Then the other one is development speed and compliance. So, everyone actually wants to get to the market as soon as possible, quickly. But, rushing actually development without following the rules, being compliant, can lead to serious problems, because actually a company might be like pushing a product through testing, and only then realizing that there's no traceability or not everything was tested. And nobody actually wants to have recalls, right? So it's better to do it in a compliant way. But today we will also share how to do it in a compliant way, but also accelerate the development, as the title of the webinar says, right? So cybersecurity and data privacy. So it's really important to actually, in today's world, to protect data, patient data, because it's when developing actually software as a medical device, like strong encryption or regular security audits, and like plan for handling the security breaches, it's really important. And it's we have to remember to keep an eye on that since the very early beginning, because if we are developing software, then something is connected to the cloud, so the security measures must be really important, because the data can be lost or accessed by somebody that shouldn't access this. And then one of the key challenges is interoperability. And now interoperability, I would say it's not just nice to have, but it's just must, feature in your device, because you shouldn't have the device that acts in silos. The devices must be connected. It's very important to have connected devices, to use data, to also ensure that your devices will streamline the processes of your customers, of providers, will make their lives easier, and will make lives of patients easier and better. Because thanks to interoperability, we can also, make care more personalized, and then improve patient outcomes. And last but not least, one of the challenges is patient engagement and usability, and then market adoption. One thing is to develop an app in a compliant way, but the other thing is to actually make patients use it. So, both patients and actually providers use it. So during this webinar, I will also share some tips and tricks on how to make patients and providers use it. What are some options, let's say ways, because the app shouldn't be just functional, but it should be also intuitive and as easy as possible to use. So these are the key challenges. And now I would like to also cover with you some of the common pitfalls in SaMD development that I myself encountered and saw throughout my experience working with many different organizations. So first, lack of regulatory alignment and strategy. It's one of the biggest mistakes. I can really see that, because organizations very often ignore regulatory requirements until like later on in the process. They first develop an app and then they think about regulatory. It's not the best, because actually we should start with regulatory alignment. We should think about our regulatory pathway, because intended use will drive regulatory pathway, which will then drive the requirements and what we would do when developing the app. So That is something that I see very often. Then another thing is cybersecurity measures that are not good enough, because very often, again, it's taken like it, it can be thought like we can take care of the cybersecurity at the end, but again, it should be taken care of at the very beginning. We should start with the risk assessment, cybersecurity risk assessment, threat modeling, later on pen testing. It's very important to also take care of the encryption, secure coding, to make sure that the app that you are developing is safe. Misalignment between user needs and software functionality, it's also what I see very often, because actually if your software doesn't meet the user needs of your users, then it's going to fail. And then, it's again linked very much with the challenges of patient engagement. We have to think about the end user when developing an app. Always think about your end user, because that's who is going to use your applications. And let's be honest, if nobody will use the app, then the bottom line ROI will not be good for you neither. So it's very important from the business side as well. Insufficient testing and quality assurance. If we are rushing to get the product to market without like proper testing, it's not the best. It can lead to compliance issues, product recalls, or even worse, like, again, patience is at the end. We have to remember that we have to test the app very well to ensure patient safety. And then lack of focus on scalability and interoperability is one of the pitfalls, because when we start developing a product, we should start with the end in mind. So think about where do you want to be in a couple of years from now. So build the architecture in a scalable way and make it also connected, because if you don't think ahead, it will be very hard to scale and then create the app in continuous way. So these are the common pitfalls and the challenges. So
One thing to add, sorry, if you can go back.
no,
Uh,
go ahead, Abbas. Yeah.
the cybersecurity one specifically is now a requirement for the FDA. So they specifically say it needs to be a life cycle approach that you can no longer just do at the end, because they do want a full secure product lifecycle development. That's the word they use in their guidance. But that, again, I agree with that. These are some of the common pitfalls that we also see in projects we worked on.
Exactly, right. And a great point. Thanks actually for the cybersecurity, because it's not just like we have to follow some rules, but then the SBOM, right? All the documentation. And you guys, I know that you also have seen that, and great to see that you take care of that as well. So, great point. So, would you add anything else, Abbas, actually, apart from this one?
I think you covered most of them. I think to me, I see the same thing as the rush to go market, kind of, without thinking regulatory, without thinking cybersecurity, without thinking about quality. There's a reputational risk that comes with all this. So not only there's regulatory risk or market risk, but you have a reputation risk. If you take your app, go to market, and it's not good enough, it's, you also have a reputational aspect. So even if you make it good enough later, once people don't like, there's only first impressions to matter, and so
Yes.
the rush to go to market has to be balanced with proper controls and proper alignment with what the user needs. But I would say the misalignment between user needs and software functionality would be my number one pitfall if I had to rank them, just because a lot of time we still build what we think they want versus what they actually want. And that happens so often that there's beautiful apps that get built, really good functionality, but never get used. Um,
Yeah.
or they don't fit in the workflow, which is the same kind of idea. So like you have functionality, but if it doesn't fit in the patient's or the provider's workflows, they're not going to use it.
Exactly. And actually, we see that very often as well. So we will share in a second how to overcome that. And I'm also very interested to hear from you later on What do you think? Whether you would agree with our approach, on how to overcome the challenges, because we see the similar things. So good. So now, as we briefly chatted, so how to actually, overcome these challenges. So I would have strategic development approach would be your path to success. So now what I would like to do is to share with our audience, a couple of, let's say, points, what we do, and some tips based on our experience, how to overcome all of these challenges and pitfalls that we just shared. So the very first one, actually, when you start developing software, especially, or software as a medical device, you should think about what methodology to choose, right? Whether it's waterfall or agile development. So maybe just briefly think about waterfall as the methodology, like waterfall, that like waterfalls on the stages, the same in the approach. You follow specific phases, and one after the other. One phase must be completed after the other. And then agile development, on the other hand, is allows you to change and pivot, because it gives you more flexibility than the waterfall approach. And again, it's not that one is better than the other, but each of them has their pros and cons, and just must be chosen for specific reason, right? Abbas, like for the hardware, you would probably go with waterfall, but for the software, you would go with agile.
Yeah, and it depends on, like as you mentioned, hardware hard to change, software a little easier to change comparatively. It also depends on how much requirements are solidified. If you really truly have 100% requirements solidified, which almost never happens, but if you do, uh, then waterfall is fine. But in most cases, you want that user feedback as soon as possible. Specifically, when you're talking about patient engagement or provider engagement, not having that feedback is till the end is consequential to the success of your app. So yes, we use Agile, and I think most software providers will use Agile, but it depends on what you're trying to do.
Exactly. And you just mentioned, like user feedback, right? It's one of the, let's say, cons of a waterfall methodology, because you cannot really get the user feedback. But again, on the other side, if you have all of the requirements, you have the clarity, you have the structure, and you have predictability. So, it's about the choosing the right solution, I would say. And exactly. And for the software, for the software we mainly use agile methodology, but what we call, it's a compliant agile methodology, that will allow us to actually balance the speed with compliance. Uh, so let's go into the agile. So I would say that agile actually gives you several advantages when developing software as a medical device. One of them is rapid iteration and early testing. So as you mentioned, Abbas, user testing, right? So if we get user testing, if we get user feedback, we can then iterate and change if needed, to make sure that, again, we meet the user needs, so that our beautifully designed application is actually used. So that is one of the reasons. The other one, improved collaboration and transparency. So that is more, again, can be with your client, can be with patients, can be with your provider. But for us as HTD, because we are focused on providing services, it's more focused on the feedback with our clients, right? If we build a product for somebody, we want to be transparent, have open communication, and gather feedback often, to then be able to change. And exactly, adaptability to changing requirements, both user requirements, maybe clients requirements, but what we mentioned, also FDA guidelines. So let's imagine you started to develop a software as a medical device before the cybersecurity guideline was released, and you are following waterfall, and then at the end you are like, oh, I have to start all over or redo a lot of things. But if you would do with agile way, you can along the way adapt and adjust. I don't know, Abbas, if you would agree with all the points, or if you would like to add something else.
No, I think I agree. I would just say that the transparency flows through till the end user. So yes, while you as a service provider want to be transparent with your customer, they can take the same app and then get feedback from their customers, which would be patients or providers or whoever they are, right? So the transparency can flow through with this approach. One thing that we see a lot of times, specifically with folks that come from non-MedTech background, software background, but non-MedTech, is that compliance. So the key here is doing Agile with compliance, because Agile has this
Yes.
reputation of, break things and break it fast. That's
Yeah.
kind of the Silicon Valley stuff. That doesn't work in MedTech. So we still have to do compliant work. It's just it allows you to be more iterative, allows you to change and adapt as your customer needs or end user needs change. But it doesn't mean you're just slinging code and throwing out stuff um,
Yes.
to the end user.
Yes, fully agree. And there's much more, right? Like the agile to make agile compliant, it's not so easy. So there, it's not so easy, but it's possible.
Yeah.
It's definitely possible. So we would probably spend like the whole webinar hour to actually talk about it. So if somebody actually wants to learn more about it, I will share after the webinar, maybe with you, and then Abbas, you can share with the audience article that I wrote some time ago. So for more details.
Yeah, sure.
But let's continue. So the other thing is human-centered design, because we do have to prioritize patient engagement. Everything is actually, linked, like user testing, user feedback, and then patient engagement. Um, so as I mentioned, human-centered design is, for us, it's a key when developing software that actually will be working for end user and will be used by end user. So I would say that behavior change design and user testing iteration goes hands in hands. So let's give you an example. Like when developing software that could be like a heart failure mobile application, for a heart failure, like a remote monitoring maybe app, behavior change design approach could include like daily prompts that would encourage patients to input their weight or like symptoms, then would give some rewards for progress, for the consistency, and then patients, thanks to that, might also like receive personalized tips based on the data that we are gathering, like suggestions to lower some like sodium intake when they eat, change their diet, etc. So behavior change design is actually a method used to encourage people to adopt healthier habits, and actually adopt these healthier habits through like small prompts, through some nudges, through positive reinforcements, reminders, rewards, to make it like easier for end user, for the patient to adapt to something, and to then again improve their outcomes thanks to it. And then again, this user testing, it's very important to start user testing early on when we are designing the software. So again, from our experience, we when we were developing software as a medical device that was actually in the oncology space, during the design phases, we implemented a user testing, and we actually iterated designs even before development, which actually helps us to then accelerate, the development and decrease the cost, because we didn't have to spend more time of developers, but not just, but designers. So we actually started testing even on the like mock-ups, prototypes early on, which helped later on in the development. And then the last one is best practices for usability. So again, human factors engineering and usability engineering is very important, making the interface intuitive, aligning software with existing workflows. What you mentioned, Abbas, it's not just like creating the software, but actually putting that into existing workflows so that it's seamless and it's not additional burden. Like we don't create additional application that is like, I don't know how many applications you have on your phone, but I have a lot. So creating another one would be like, do I really want to use it? So we have to think about making the app sticky and engaging. So that's what I would say about human-centered design. Abbas, if you would like to add anything else.
Yeah, a couple of things here. One is the behavior of the user changes over time. So, for example, when smartphones came up, 15, 17 years ago, whenever it was, when the Apple one launched. There was a different engagement that was happening with the smartphone. People were more people, there were less apps, so people would prioritize and look at apps. Today, you have hundreds and thousands and millions of apps, right? My phone, I don't know how many they have, but there's lots. So adding a new app and it changes, it doesn't really, you don't get the same engagement just because you have an app. You really have to think how that app fits into the patient's workflow or the provider's workflow, who are you building the app for? Because if it doesn't fit and doesn't give you the information or prompt for an action at the right time, it's going to get ignored. And there's a good example. There's a study that on sleep apnea apps. So apps that promote good sleeping habits or allow you to have sleep apnea therapy stuff like that. They found that people would use that app for the first 2 weeks regularly, and then that just falls off. And that's not very different than going to a gym. People go to gym January, the first 2 weeks, and then everybody just falls off. And part of that is just because it doesn't fit into their lifestyle, right? You can make an effort to fit that in lifestyle. So if you don't fit in your lifestyle, the patients don't change their lifestyle. So it's very hard ask for them to say do this thing every day. So if you're asking them to log their symptoms every day or input or review information every day, it's not going to happen. So you have to understand, and part of that is your studies need to be longer than 1 day, because in 1 day people will pay attention, and you get into a false kind of requirements where this is something the user will do every day, but it's hard to change people's behavior. So your app needs to fit into existing behavior, not ask them to change behaviors.
Fully agree. And also, it's important, right, what you mentioned, that when we do user testing, to test with proper user groups, right? Let's say that your app is for users with diabetes, so you have to test with users that actually have diabetes, right? Not with like other people. And just like simple maybe example, when, because you also mentioned adding some data, right? Putting some input. Very easy thing that I also read somewhere. And probably most of the people now do. Everybody has. If you have an iPhone, you have Apple Kit, not Apple Kit, Apple Health. So Apple Health tracks lots of stuff, right? So just simple connectivity, like to Apple Health or like to some other stuff that already tracks steps, already knows your weight, etc., would really simplify the process for the user, because they wouldn't have this additional step to do. So the easier we make it for the user, the better. So definitely. And one more thing that I really find also helping for the users and encouraging is like gamification, even like adding some points, small nudges, and breaking down, bigger milestones into actually smaller steps, because we don't want to overwhelm the user, right? Like, oh, I will achieve this milestones in a month. That's, you mentioned like after 2 weeks they would delete the app, so they would not even reach that. So also very important to break this down into smaller pieces. Good. So now we have the usability. So now the cybersecurity, what you also mentioned, Abbas, it's critical aspect, I would say, because SaMD involves sensitive patients' data, and one breach of the data can damage company reputation, what you also mentioned, Abbas, and actually can also damage patients' lives. So nobody wants that. So that's why it's super important to take care of that. So what we should do, proactive cybersecurity measures. So embedding actually cybersecurity from the very start, I would say it's non-negotiable. And that can include, security like CI/CD, any secure software development practices. Abbas, you are also very technical, so probably you could share what you guys do, any tips. But would you agree that implementing that from early on, it's critical?
Yes, it's critical. Partly because it's hard to go. It's like quality. It's hard to add at the end, right?
Exactly.
Quality is like that. It's a cultural thing, and cybersecurity is a cultural thing too. You got to start, and it needs to be part of your team. But a lot of people get scared It's like, I don't want to do all this work. It's not that much work. It's a different approach or a different kind of approach. But a lot of it's good engineering practices to begin with. You should be doing it without the word cybersecurity on it. It's just things that you do. So it's really good engineering practices, labeled as cybersecurity or labeled as an umbrella of security, which sometimes scares people. But yes, it needs to be part of the life cycle, but it's also not something that will now triple your cost, for example,
Yes.
just because you decide to do it.
Exactly. So what you mentioned, secure coding practices, right? Very important. And then I would say that also regular security audits, then pen testing, it's also very important. You gotta check and actually try to hack your application before the hackers do so. So that's also important to do audits to check. And then, integration with healthcare IT systems, because breaches very often happen during the integration. So it's very important to do it in the right way, with the right partners, with somebody that really understands that and knows how to do it. Because doing it right will help you to secure the data to make it safe. And then that leads us to another thing, which is interoperability with healthcare systems, connected devices. So connected devices, I would say, it's not just like a trend, but it's a necessity right now, because it's very important to make your software not product work in silos, but be connected. And again, what you have mentioned also, fit in the workflow, make it smooth, streamline the processes, because then you will increase engagement, both patients and providers, and then you will make your app successful. So it's actually, I would say, it's very much linked. It's like a snowball effect. You have to remember about all of these aspects to be successful. So I would say that interoperability makes definitely lives easier, and it's important to connect it with EHR systems, whether it's Epic, Athena, or any others. Because, for example, like again, coming back to this heart failure monitoring application, if we would be gathering data constantly, continuously from the patient, and if you would integrate your application with EHR, you would really make the life easier for your patient and provider, because provider you would get data from the patient continuously, right? So they would be able to gather data, get insights, and then make more personalized decisions. So patients would benefit from that. So that is why it's so important to integrate with EHR systems. And then, as I mentioned, it enhance operational efficiency, because if your device is just like disconnected, it's very hard to then put the data manually, or like provider, again, taking example of that application, or like diabetes, let's say, management app, without syncing that, provider would have to send a message or ask patient or wait for the patient to come and share the data, which really adds it's a challenge. So that is why, to overcome these challenges, it's very important to connect, to make it or interoperable, to then enable a smooth data exchange. And then, last but not least, I would say that also interoperability gives us another advantage, because it unlocks, actually, for many of our audiences, I would say, unlocking new business models, like subscription based offering. Because if your connected device would gather lots of continuous data, it can be used, like, you could offer ongoing services, like creating recurring revenue streams for you by charging a subscription model, by charging a subscription fee to your clients. And then, like, collected data could be integrated, as we mentioned before, and that would really benefit your providers, your clients, because they would get access to data, they would be happy, and you would get recurring revenue. So that can be also a fee for pay per like use, let's say, or pay per monthly subscription, however you would call it. There are many different models, but what I really want to highlight here, it's it can really unlock additional revenue streams. So again, I think it's something that our audience would be interested in exploring more. And And after this one, after the interoperability, let's say after you already connect your devices to the healthcare IT systems, you unlock the new revenue streams through subscription-based model. I would say you still have to remember about being compliant, and you still have to remember about regulations. So, I would say that you have to remember to align with FDA or any other regulatory bodies early on. Do pre-submission, talk with FDA, because you will gather feedback early on, and then you will not have to wait for long times, do submission, wait, get feedback, and then redo stuff. So I would definitely say early alignment will definitely help. Documentation and risk management. What we say in the quality, if something is not documented, doesn't exist, and it's actually true. So documentation is key, and doing risk management not just as a one thing, but doing this throughout the whole product lifecycle development, is very important as well. And then strategic partnerships with both regulatory experts, but also technical experts that have been there, have done that, and know how to take the product successfully. And this is what I would now that would lead me to another point, that is leveraging existing solutions. Why to redo something, why to do something that is already there, already exists, right? So I would say leverage existing platforms like Galen data, because it will not just like speed up the development, but it will also help manufacturers, innovators, to truly focus on what's their unique value proposition, to truly focus on this front end, on creating patient engagement, on creating your market access strategy, what is unique about you. And also it really makes it faster to develop. Myself, our team, we've been partners with Galen Data, and thanks to actually Galen Data, we could develop an app. Uh, Actually, that was our great partnership example, I would say. We've developed an app in 3 months. So, and I would say we wouldn't be able to do so without using what's already there, right? Compliant cloud solution. So we also mentioned how important is compliance and security. And again, you have to ensure that if you are leveraging already existing solution, it has to follow all the rules. And why we chose Galen Data? Because you guys take care of all the cybersecurity, all of the regulations, compliance. So everything is actually taken care of. And again, we could focus on what we do also great, which is behavior change design, developing an app, interoperability, connecting that. So that's why it was a recipe, I would say, for success. And and as I mentioned, thanks to utilizing something that is already proven, we could focus on patients, we could focus on end user, we could do testing, and thanks to that, we didn't have to spend a lot of effort and thinking on the cloud solutions. Of course, we could do that as well, but thanks to actually Galen data, we could accelerate development, truly focus on the end user. Um, Abbas, would you add anything else to this one?
No, I would say leverage existing solutions for sure. And it's hard to build software today without leveraging other people's software. That's just how it is. The trick is to ensure the right quality and compliance of that third-party solution. That if they are
Yes.
built it the right way. So, I mean, we have a term, right, in 604 called SOUP, or software of unknown provenance. So if you can use SOUP, and many people will use SOUP, it's just when you use that, you have to be careful on kind of how you're managing that third-party software, or use something like in a compliance solution that is not a SOUP, because you know the provenance, it's built the right way. But then there's a balance there. Building everything from scratch is almost impossible. So you are going to end up using something else, but just realize that you have to manage the risk. And so the less compliant a solution is, or a third party solution is, the more risk you add, and you want to make sure that you manage that risk.
Fully agree, and that's why it's important to choose the right partners, right?
Yep.
So now we actually went through the challenges, the pitfalls, and I hope that what I also shared, uh, these tips and tricks on how to overcome that were helpful. But now I would really like to also share our use case, a real world use case that I already mentioned, our successful partnership, HTD and then the Galen data. It actually started a year ago when we were developing a mobile application that was classed to a medical device in the neurology space. That was a mobile application for patients with tremors. And actually we've developed that with amazing team from US. And you know what we did? We, as I mentioned, we developed an app in only 3 months, which was wow, very fast. But why we did it? Because we worked very closely with Abbas, with Alex, with the team from Galen Data, and the partnership and the communication was great. So actually, in the very beginning, we also asked about. I myself was asking about like Abbas, so do you follow the IEC CT 304, etc., etc. So yes, that was all there. Documentation is also very well prepared. So we could, as HTD, we could focus on, doing the human factors, usability engineering, um, and focus on, as I mentioned, on the patient engagement. We could do testing, which just helps us to accelerate the development and again decrease the cost. Um, you guys also take care of the cybersecurity, which is truly important, and you keep up with the new regulations, which is great. Um, so we what we did, we utilized Bluetooth. We connected mobile application, developed a mobile application, connected that with a wristband that was through Bluetooth, and then we connected mobile application with Galen data. And Galen data, we were gathering data in Galen data, and we could also control the device through application and through Galen data. So I would say great partnership, and we are truly looking forward to following future applications and partnership, because it was not only standards that you are following and documentation that you have, but also the communication, day-to-day work. Because I would say for me this is super important, like to have transparent communication, open communication. Um, if we have any issue, we could always send a message, chat, uh, to make just to work as a one team, even though we were like hundreds of miles away. So I would say amazing partnership, and that is why it's important to leverage existing platforms, but also to choose the right partners. Abbas, would you add anything?
No, same thing. I think it was easy to work with actually. The team there, super smart. They got the stuff and able to do it, and yeah, it was fast. And I think that the end solution is the customer is happy.
Yeah,
A joint customer we have, and they've been using this at least in clinical trials with patients, and the patient seems to be benefiting from the solution.
exactly. So that's the most important, right?
That's the most important thing. Yeah.
Exactly, patients is benefiting, or a client, is
Yeah.
happy. So we are happy. We are happy as well.
Yes,
Uh,
absolutely.
yes. So to actually wrap up, I would say in the very beginning of the webinar, I mentioned that I do want to, like make us think as developing software medical devices like climbing a mountain as a Kilimanjaro. I think we're getting there. Abbas, we're like almost now on the top, as we're like at the end of the webinar. So I would just say once again, right strategies and the right partners will definitely help you get to the top. But I would say again, don't do it alone, because if you would partner with the people that have already been there, have already done that, have made some mistakes in the past, you will not make them. And thanks to that, your partners will be actually like guides, like Abbas and myself now, right? Will be like guides that will be guiding you throughout this journey on the hike on the top of Kilimanjaro. And now I would say, from my personal experience, actually, 2 years ago when I was hiking Kilimanjaro, I could maybe do it alone by myself with a proper preparation and the toolkit and existing solutions, let's say, that were there. But without my guide, without the partner that I went to the top, I don't think that I would make it actually, because again, it was about partnership, communication, and guiding me where to go and how to go there. So that is why it's super important. And I would say, SaMD development can be challenging, can be difficult, but once you get to the top, I would say that the view is amazing, is stunning, and the feeling of being there. Oh my gosh, it's simply you gotta go there. So to feel it, it's amazing. So truly recommend. So now, if you would like to chat more about software as a medical device development or simply talk about going to a Kilimanjaro, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and we'll be more than happy to chat. And Abbas, high five, we got to the top
Uh,
together.
yeah, well, virtually, yes. I don't know if I'll ever climb Kilimanjaro. We'll see.
Oh, with the right partners, you can get
Oh,
there.
well, you're the right partner. That's true. You never know. Thanks, Veronica. This was really engaging and really informative. I see there's some questions that have come in, so let's dig into. We have a little bit of time. First question. This is more of a statement rather than a question. As we were talking about number of apps, one of the users actually pulled up statistics. There's actually 4 million apps in Apple App Store and 16 million on Google Play. So a lot of
Wow,
apps that exist. So your app can get lost.
4
And
million, 16 million? Wow.
16, yeah, 16 on Android and 4 million on iOS. Another question that came in, this is around large language models and opinion on use of LLM models as clinical decision support systems. Thoughts?
Oh yeah, this is a great actually question. So again, it all depends if I understand the question correctly. So whether it's software's medical device or not. One.
It depends on, I mean, so the wording here is the clinical decision support system, and
Yep.
the
So the
FDA
keyword.
has a specific category for that.
Yes, so clinical decision support could be SaMD, but doesn't have to be. It all depends actually how would you frame your intended use. And then from the intended use, and again, the regulatory pathway assessment, it then all takes you there. Because we've developed actually apps that were for clinical decision support and were not SaMD, but we were also developed apps that were very similar, but were actually SaMD. So it all depends on your and let's say purpose. If it diagnoses, then it will be as a software as a medical device. If it treats, it will be a software as a medical device. So my recommendation would be always start with the regulatory consultant or like your regulatory team that you have and talk about your intended use. If you don't have intended use drafted, uh, chat with the consultant on or the expert, and you will draft it together because sometimes it might be beneficial for you to actually be software as a medical device from the reimbursement aspects because sometimes also they are new like reimbursement regulations for the new innovative solutions and for the medical devices. So maybe it would be good for you to be considered as a medical device. But on the other hand, maybe you don't want to go this path. Maybe you want to go faster to the market. So then just think about the functionality and the intended use.
I will add that using an LLM is going to be harder and harder to get into a CDDS or CDSS category, just because
Mm,
the FDA has tightened what is CDSS, what can qualify as CDSS, and conversely in Europe, because of the AI Act and a bunch of other stuff, it's also very hard to kind of claim that a large language model or any AI for that matter doesn't fit into a SaMD category and can get into the CDSS category. Um, for the FDA, that they have a specific language that says that the clinician has to be able to independently verify whatever support you're
yeah,
giving.
yes,
It becomes harder with LLMs to do. So there's very gray area again. Both of us are not regulatory experts. You do
yeah,
need to get regulatory advice on this one, but in general, We see a lot more LLMs used in kind of periphery, where it's more of questions or research or help with note taking or help with kind of just a knowledge base aspect of it, but less on actual clinical care unless it goes through a SaMD kind of approach. Another question. How do you recommend handling iterative updates to the product once in the field? And can the recent PCCP approach by the FDA help here?
So I would say that again it would depend the updates. So if you want to update the software features, but let's say the software is already there on the market, right? And you would like to add some additional features, whether you have to go through additional submission or not. It all depends again on the intended use. So if the additional features would impact the initial intended use, you would have to do, let's say, resubmission. If the additional features would not like much impact that, you would not have to do it, but do the resubmission. What I would say is, again, beginning with end in mind. Try to think about like the future and where would you like to be in a couple of years, because in medtech we think in years because everything takes so long. Uh, so um, think like, hey, maybe it would be worth to actually spend more time on the development initially rather than redoing that in the future. But again, it would all depend on the features that you want to add, on the changes, on the intended use. I know it's not like a very clear answer, but that's actually how it is.
And the answer is always it depends. It depends on what you
Yeah,
do. The
yeah,
PCCP is a good approach, but it's so new, and the FDA hasn't necessarily fleshed out exactly everything they will accept in a
yeah,
PCCP. That right now, I think in our experience, most companies are really doing when they're using PCCP is for changes that are like, for example, if you have an iOS app and you're submitting that today, and then but you're going to develop an Android app that's functionally the same, but it's going to be a different app that you can add in your PCCP that fact, because it doesn't change your intended use, it just expands the opportunity set here. So that's something you do. But if you're going to add a new feature that's going to change how the patient interacts, that typically is going to be harder to put in a PCCP. Again, not a regulatory expert, and this is a very new guidance that we really don't know the FDA is thinking about it. Plus, you don't have an equivalent in EU yet of something like this. Um, Another question that came: what, in your experience, is the biggest regulatory bottleneck that delays the SaMD development, and how can we address it?
the biggest one. I would say that one of the challenges that we could see is that SaMD is still very new. I would say that it's truly new, and there's no regulations for everything yet. So I would say this is kind of a bottleneck because we don't know what we don't know, and we don't know how to prepare for some stuff like LLM, AI/ML. All this is super new, and FDA is still like working on regulations. Cybersecurity was recently released, so also something new. So I would say that the true challenge, it's just keeping up to date and being kind of like open to change and to adapt, because it's ever evolving, and it's in software it will be evolving because it's we all the time have this like new technologies, and now with this LLM generative AI, I'm very actually curious about the future and what will be happening. But also, I do think that the future is bright. I always say that because FDA is keeping up to date. So I don't know, Abbas, if you would agree or you something
No,
else.
I mean, I agree the technology is moving faster than the regulatory landscape, which is in software that happens. That the FDA is now, at least the FDA is now moving or trying to move as fast as it can, or trying to at least take a kind of approach as saying, we'll see how this develops before we come in and do something. But that's, I think, I agree, that's the biggest risk is not knowing what will happen. So if you take a path and the FDA decides, oh, well, that's a different path, that can be an issue. So I would say not a bottleneck, but more of a risk there. All right, well, I think we have time for one more question. and this is about scaling. So you mentioned scaling SaMD solution. So what are the biggest barriers in scaling SaMD solutions?
And not thinking about scaling early enough. I would say these are the barriers, because if you have a right and experienced architect, you would make it happen. And but then, if you are not thinking about it early on and you start the development, you build on the blocks, and then you think about, oh, maybe it would be good to add something. You'd have to redo tons of stuff from the back end, architecture perspective. So I would say just thinking and planning well, and being prepared is the most important.
Cool. All right, that's all the time we had. Thanks, Veronica, for all the time. Thanks, all the listener, for joining in and giving 1 hour of your time to listen to. This was great. Thank you. We'll just a reminder. We'll send you this recording of this webinar by tomorrow. So, or if you missed it, you can forward it. It's also going to be on our website or on our YouTube channel. So if you want to subscribe to the YouTube channel and know the latest, you can do that as well. There is information on the screen here. I'll also, when we send this out, we'll also include the HT and Weronika's information, so you can join her. She runs a great series called MedTech in a Minute, or something like that,
That's it. Oh,
on LinkedIn, where she gives advice, about MedTech stuff in 1 minute. So that's great as well. So check that out as well. But thanks for joining, and you all have a great day.
thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks.